Okay, so today we are doing a video on my top 10. What are my top 10 books of all time? You guys don't know me, and I don't know you. I figured this would be a good way for you guys to get to know me, get to know what type of books I like, get to know, what my number one book of all time is, why it's my number one book, and why, some books are at number 10. And I also figured this video would be a good way for me to check my top 10, when I do this video in a year again after I've read the plethora of books that I have on my TBR. So, with that being said, let's get into it. So at number 10, we have Jumper, right? Boom. So Jumper is an interesting book. I feel like most people don't like this movie. I don't like this movie. I thought the movie was cool. The movie was one of those movies that they have a very good concept. And I mean, the concept for the movie is really good because I like the book. The movie had a really good concept. It just, it didn't really execute it well. The action and everything is cool, but the characters in the movie I don't really care for, but I care for the characters in the book Jumper. More specifically for David, the main character. I care for him more because if I'm remembering correctly, the book is told from, his POV and his POV only. And I ran into this book because I watched the movie. I think teleportation is just one of my, favorite powers, abilities. And this movie, they make teleportation look so cool. And then I found out this movie was based on a book. And so evidently, I found the book, I read the book, and I loved the book. The book goes so much deeper into David's struggle as, him finding out that he has these abilities, his just like escape from an abusive household, and just him making his way in life now that he is, on his own. He has these abilities. What is he gonna do? And I think it also takes an interesting look at him being, this person with this amazing power. Is he gonna use this power to kind of, stand over people, belittle people, or will he use this ability just to be able to live his life easier and more in a more entertaining way, I guess you could say. But I haven't read this book in the past, probably in the past 10 years. And so as I've read other things throughout, my life, this book has just gotten lower and lower on my list as, as life goes on. It's still a book that I really like. I've planned to read it one day to see if it holds up to what I thought of it back then. But for right now, it's sitting at number 10. All right. Next, we have The Mad Ship by the one and only Robin Hobb, a.k.a. to me, the Queen of Fantasy. Don't ask me, ask your mother. Now, I mean, as you can see, I've read this book already. I mean, obviously, if it's on my top 10, I read this book. But I read this book, so there's a review coming out for this book. I had read the first book, The Ship of Magic, and I didn't think I could love another book more than, the way The Ship of Magic ended. And then I read this, and it does so much more for the characters in the story and just like the world for the Realm of the Elderlings. I know the series is called, I can't remember what the world is, but I mean, Bingtown, obviously, but just like the world of where the Realm of the Elderlings is set in, this book does so much more building on that. I mean, I love this book. This book is only number 9 on the list because I just read it. When I redo this list in like a year or so, we'll see if this book, most likely it will, or maybe the last book, Ship of Destiny, maybe the last book in the series will beat this book out. But yeah, I love this book. The characters in this book are so like real and frustrating, and I feel so bad for some of them, but at the same time, I'm also sometimes I feel like I'm waiting for some characters in this book to get their just desserts. If you know, you know, basically. Number 8, Fell. So this is another book that I read a very long time ago, but I haven't read this book like Jumper. I haven't read it in almost 10 years, I think. This book is a part of a duology. I can't remember the name, but the first book in the duology is called Sight, and then Fell. Fell is based on the brother of the main character from Sight. And so Fell is a wolf who has this telepathic link with a little girl, and the book is told from Fell's perspective. Now this book is only here, honestly, because I remember I had such strong like emotions and feelings for this book. Most likely when I get through the rest of the books I have to read this year, this book is going to be knocked maybe off, down, switched around. So with that being said, for right now, it's sitting at number 8. Now let's get to the next book. All right. Number 7. Well, not The Well of Ascension. I grabbed the wrong book. Okay. Mistborn. This book deserves its spot on this list. This book is the book that got me or restarted my love for reading. This book also introduced me to modern fantasy, you could say. I thought this book, and just the way this book is written, the way this book, its world is built, so many things in this book surprised me and wowed me, and I loved every second of it when I read it. Therefore, number 7. Number 6, The Fifth Season. This is an amazing book. This book, I know everything I just said about Mistborn. I read this after Mistborn, and this book does so much. And first of all, I was surprised when I first read this book, just because if you've read this book, I'm not going to spoil it, or I'm trying not to spoil it, but the abilities, the magic in this book seems so like literally earth-breaking, earth-shattering abilities. And just the way some of the characters in this book are controlled or not allowed to, use the full extent of their abilities blew my mind, first of all. Because sometimes you think if you have a Superman level, character with those abilities, that they won't be able, or that they will be able to blast through anything, and they'll be able to, basically fix any of their issues with their magic. And that's not the case in this book. Number 6 is Kindred. Kindred was an experience, definitely. The thing about Kindred is a lot of times something like time travel. A lot of times I feel like time travel is a waste of time, or not a waste of time, but like something pointless for authors to do, because time travel just can break their story. And sometimes, not even sometimes, I honestly don't care for it in stories. If there is a story with time travel, I could usually do without reading that story. But I read Kindred because my wife loved this book, and she told me about it when we first, met, when we first, had our first date or something. And then I read this book, and I was blown away with the use of time travel in this book, because, not to spoil it, but just the way that time travel is used for our main character, Dana. the way that time travel is used as the way for her to explore her past, some of like where her ancestors come from, was one, mind blowing for me, and two, I feel like the message, the commentary of this book, speaks a lot to Kindred. Is a must read. Kindred is an amazing book, and I think one of the best examples of a way you can use time travel in your story. All right. Number 4 is The Lies of Locke Lamora. I had never heard of this book until I started watching booktubers, specifically Murphy Napier, like one of her favorite series. And I was like, it can't be that good. And then I read it, and then it was pretty good. Not my favorite of all time, but I think The Lies of Locke Lamora does so much right in the way that it balances the tone of the story. I think this book is a good example of one of the first books I think that I've read where I didn't catch on to it immediately. When I first read this book, I started the chapter, and I was thrown off by the way that the story was written. I didn't really jive with the story, like the mechanic of going, back and forth with the flashbacks and then the main story. And I honestly put this book down for a little bit, like a month. And then when I picked it back up, I don't know what changed. I think maybe I knew what to expect, or this book probably has one of my favorite ways to write dialogue for characters. I just enjoy the way the characters in this book talk. Not only Locke, Jean, and the other gentleman bastards, but just people in the story in general. The dialogue for these characters in overall is just amazing. But to me, after you read the story about Locke, Jean, and the gentleman bastards, you'll want more, and you won't be able to put the next books down. All right. Okay. So the next books are what I'm calling the big 3. Okay. So at number 3, we have The Assassin's Apprentice and Royal Assassin. I feel like I just became like a prose reader or something. It's not something that I always used to, pick out and be able to pinpoint on being good or not. But reading some of the books that I just talked about, 5th Season, Lies of Locke Lamora, Kindred, yada, yada, yada. Some of those books that I've been talking about, I've read later in more recent years, and I've noticed how good they are written. And now when I read Assassin's Apprentice last year, I remember I had bought a bunch of books, and I was in the middle of a series actually. And then I picked up Assassin's Apprentice and some other stuff, and I started reading the first page of Assassin's Apprentice, and I couldn't put it down. I stopped reading the other series. Usually I read one book at a time. I stopped reading the other series because I needed to finish and see where the journey for my boy Fitz ends. And I was not disappointed, if I'm being honest. And I was not disappointed. Now, the reason I have 2 books here, Assassin's Apprentice and Royal Assassin, is honestly because I couldn't decide. And I was trying not to make this list a repeat list for authors that I've read a lot of, aka, Brandon Sanderson. So I tried my hardest to keep this book to 1 book per author. But I couldn't do it. I had to include this series, these books, Royal Assassin and Assassin's Apprentice, because these books are amazing. These books are fucking amazing. My heart and my emotions were pulled and pushed to the extremes when I was reading these books. and I would do it all over again just for my boy Fitz. Number 2. I don't have a number 2. Number 2 is the one and only Words of Radiance. Let me tell you about this book. Number 1, this book is number 2 and is on the list mainly because of Kaladin. Kaladin Stormblessed is the reason that this book is on this list. I think if you've read Way of Kings, I might get into a little bit of spoilers, but if you read Way of Kings, I think Words of Radiance is just like a doubling down of a lot of the things that happen in Way of Kings. I think Way of Kings has a lot of build up for the, Sanderlanche, as people call it, but it has a lot of build up towards that like end climax, and the build up builds a lot of tension for the story, and then it just avalanches or Sanderlanches, and we get this really, really high emotional high for all the things and all the things that are climaxing in the storyline at like one point in the Way of Kings. I'm not saying Words of Radiance doesn't do that, but Words of Radiance has a lot more instances in between the stories where we get those same emotions throughout the story. Yeah, that's why it's on my list. Words of Radiance does everything that Way of Kings was trying to do, but doubles down on it, and does it better. Okay. So, I have number 1. My top number 1 book of all time. We have the one and only One Piece. I love this story. There's nothing in my lifetime I will die unless they fuck up the ending. But I will die before anything takes the number 1 spot. So I read I didn't read One Piece first. I watched One Piece like most people probably had done. I watched One Piece when I was like really young. Like I was probably 10 years old, maybe even younger, when it first came on Toonami. Shout out Cartoon Network, R.I.P. I first watched it and didn't really care. I thought it was interesting, but it didn't really grab me. Fast forward a couple years later, I was like, well, whatever happened to that show? I watched it. I watched all of it up until, the time skip in One Piece. That's when I started reading One Piece from then on. I watch when certain things happen. I watch the anime, but I read One Piece. I read One Piece every week. I've reread One Piece from beginning till wherever they are at the time in the manga. I read it from beginning to end, quote unquote end, probably 5 times in my life. Yeah. The reason that One Piece is my favorite book of all time is because of the themes that are explored in the series, of the characters, and just the different messages that various arcs of One Piece can, relay to us, the reader, the viewer. And I love how One Piece, the world in One Piece is so dynamic, ever changing, and there is nothing, I don't think there's any story. Maybe there is. If there's a story like One Piece, or as like dynamic, ongoing, such an ensemble of a multitude of things, I don't even know how else to like put my words together for this series. If there is something like that, let me know in the comments, because I would love to read it. That being said, One Piece is my favorite story of all time because of characters like the Straw Hat Crew, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, Nami, Robin, Chopper, Frankie, Jinbei, Brook. I almost forgot Brook. Shout out Brook. yeah, I think everything that One Piece does, it does it really well. I think I've had such a journey with this story. I've had a journey with a lot of stories, but I've had such a lifelong journey, and I continue to have such a lifelong journey with the story. And so far, from everything that I've read, I haven't read something that has made me want to put it over One Piece, that has made me feel a lot of the things that I feel when I read One Piece, or even when I reread One Piece, honestly. Nothing has been able to, impact me, I think I'm saying, the way that One Piece has impacted me. And for that reason, it's number one. I definitely know this list is going to be completely wrecked by next year when you guys see some of the books that I have planned for the year. Make sure to click on my most anticipated reads of this year so you guys can see some of the books that I'm planning on reading that will absolutely destroy my top 10 list. Because I have some predictions already for where some books are going to be, moved around, and I have some predictions of books that won't be touched at all. But check that video out, guys. It should be up on my channel. If it's not, it will be up pretty soon. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.